There are moments in your life that feel ordinary, so ordinary, in fact, that you don't even pause to question them. A conversation you brush off, a decision you made quickly, a reaction you didn't fully think through. It felt small. It felt insignificant. It felt like just another day. But what if I told you that July 20th was not just another day? What if I told you that while you were moving through your routine, checking your phone, speaking to someone, making a choice you thought carried no weight, heaven was watching and something shifted? You didn't hear it. You didn't see it. But in the unseen realm, a line was crossed. And now, Archangel Michael steps forward, not in anger, not in judgment, but in urgency. Because what happened in that moment did not go unnoticed. It couldn't be ignored. Heaven had to respond. Let this settle into your spirit for a second. Have you felt off lately, but you couldn't explain why? Have you noticed small changes? Your energy draining faster, your thoughts becoming heavier, certain people acting differently toward you. Have you questioned yourself, wondering, why does everything suddenly feel shifted? That is not your imagination. That is not coincidence. That is the echo of a moment your spirit hasn't fully processed yet. Because on July 20th, something happened that your mind dismissed, but your spirit recorded. You crossed a line without even realizing it. And here's the part that might shake you a little. It wasn't a loud mistake. It wasn't something dramatic or obvious. It was subtle, quiet, almost invisible. Maybe it was a moment you ignored your intuition. Maybe it was when you said yes when your spirit was whispering no. Maybe it was when you stayed silent when truth was rising inside you. Or maybe it was who you allowed access to your energy in that exact moment. You see, there are spiritual boundaries that don't come with warning signs. There are invisible lines that are not drawn in front of your eyes, but they are real. And when those lines are crossed, even unintentionally, the atmosphere responds. Heaven responds. Not to punish you, but to protect you. And that's why this message found you. Because right now, you're standing at the edge of understanding something deeper about your life. Something that will explain the confusion, the tension, the unexpected shifts you've been feeling since that day. Archangel Michael is not speaking to everyone. This is not for the distracted. This is not for the passive. This is for the one who had been sensing, questioning, feeling something stir beneath the surface. This is for you. Because what happened on July 20th didn't just affect a moment. It activated a response. A divine interruption. A shift in your spiritual alignment. And whether you realize it or not, you've been walking inside the aftershock of that moment ever since. But here's the truth that changes everything. You were not left unprotected. The moment that line was crossed, heaven moved. Angels were dispatched. Winds shifted. Things began rearranging, some in your favor, some to remove what could harm you. And now, you are being called into awareness. Because you cannot navigate what you do not understand. You cannot correct what you do not see. And you cannot step into your next season carrying the weight of something you don't even recognize yet. So stay with me. Don't write this moment. Don't scroll past this feeling. Because what Archangel Michael is about to reveal next will make everything you've been experiencing finally make sense. This is not random. This is not accidental. This is your divine interruption. Type "I am aware" in the comments if you feel this message reaching your spirit. Blessing code 2020 is now activated around you. Now listen carefully, because this is where the message begins to go deeper, and where your spirit may start recognizing something your mind has been trying to ignore. The line you crossed was never marked with a warning sign. There was no voice that shouted stop. There was no visible boundary drawn in front of you. That's what makes it so dangerous, and that's what makes this moment so bored. Because spiritual lines are not like physical ones. They are felt, not seen. They are discerned, not announced. And most of the time they are crossed in moments that feel completely normal. You didn't wake up on July 20th thinking, "Today, I will step out of alignment." No. You moved like you always do. You spoke like you always speak. You trusted your surroundings the way you always have. And yet, in the middle of something that felt routine, your spirit hesitated for just a second. Do you remember that moment? That brief pause, that quiet discomfort, that subtle inner voice that didn't fully agree with what was happening? You felt it, but you moved past it. And that was the moment. That was the exact point where the unseen line was crossed. It may have been a conversation where you allowed something into your space that did not belong there. Words that carried negativity, doubt, or hidden intention. You stayed present, you listened, you engaged, but your spirit was already signaling that something was off. Not dramatically, not loudly, just enough for you to notice if you had slowed down. Or maybe it was a decision. A choice that seemed harmless on the surface, but internally, you knew it didn't fully align with who you are becoming. You justified it. You told yourself it was easier this way. You convinced yourself it wouldn't matter. But your spirit doesn't operate on convenience. It operates on truth. And in that moment, truth was gently pulling you one way while your comfort pulled you another. And you chose comfort. This is not condemnation. This is clarity. Because every person listening to this has been there. That moment where something feels slightly off, but not enough to stop you. That moment where your intuition whispers, but your mind overrides it. That moment where you ignore the signal because it's easier to proceed than to pause. But what you must understand is this. Small moments in the physical realm can create massive shifts in the spiritual realm. What felt like a minor decision to you was a doorway in the unseen. And when that doorway opened, even slightly, something had access that was not meant to have it. This is why things began to feel different afterward. Because the line you crossed was not about right or wrong in a human sense. It was about alignment. It was about access. It was about energy, influence, and spiritual positioning. You stepped into an atmosphere that did not match your assignment, and your spirit felt it immediately. A heaviness you couldn't explain. That was misalignment. That sudden confusion. That was interference. That shift in how people responded to you. That was exposure. Because when you cross a spiritual line, even unknowingly, two things always happen. Something gains access and something gets activated. Access to your energy, your thoughts, your emotional space. Activation of reactions, shifts, and responses both within you and around you. And here is what makes this even more real. You didn't just cross a line outwardly. You crossed it inwardly. Because the moment you ignored your inner knowing, you created a disconnect between your spirit and your actions. Not a permanent one, not a destructive one, but a noticeable one. And that disconnect is what heaven responded to. Not to punish you, but to restore alignment before the shift went deeper. Because if left unaddressed, that one moment could have led to repeated patterns, repeated compromises, repeated exposures to things that slowly drain, confuse, and delay you. And you were never meant to stay in this space. That's why this message is reaching you now. Because the line was crossed, but it can also be corrected. You are not stuck. You are not lost. You are being made aware. And awareness is where realignment begins. So don't dismiss what you're feeling right now. Don't rush past this recognition. Because the more you understand what happened in that moment, the more clearly you will see why everything that followed had to unfold the way it did. This was not random. This was a signal. And in the next part you will understand why heaven could not remain silent after that line was crossed. Type ICEIT now in the comments if this truth is becoming clear to you. Blessing code 3030 is now surrounding your awareness. And now listen closely, because this is the part where everything begins to connect, where confusion turns into understanding, and where you realize that what happened after July 20th was not random. It was a direct response. Because the moment that unseen line was crossed, heaven did not hesitate. Heaven did not ignore it. Heaven did not wait to see what would happen next. Heaven responded immediately. And the reason is simple, but it carries weight. You are not ordinary. What affects others casually cannot affect you casually. What others can entertain without consequence, you cannot. Because of what you carry, because of what hath been assigned to your life, because of the level of awareness and sensitivity within your spirit, there are certain boundaries around you that are not negotiable. And when those boundaries are touched, even unintentionally, the spiritual realm reacts. This is where Archangel Michael steps forward again, not as a distant observer, but as an active protector. His presence in this moment is not symbolic, it is strategic. Because when alignment shifts, protection must move. When access is opened, even slightly, defense must activate. You must understand this clearly. Heaven did not respond because you failed. Heaven responded because you are protected. That changes everything. Because what you experienced after that moment, the sudden emotional weight, the unusual tension, the unexpected disruptions, those were not punishments. Those were corrections. Those were adjustments. Those were divine interventions designed to prevent something deeper from taking root. Think about it. Things that once felt stable suddenly became unstable. Conversations that used to flow easily became strained. Situations that once felt clear became confusing. It felt like something was being shaken, like something was being rearranged without your permission. But here is the truth. It wasn't being done to you. It was being done for you. Because when heaven sees that something has entered your space that does not belong there, it does not negotiate with it. It does not coexist with it. It removes it. And sometimes that removal feels uncomfortable. Sometimes it feels like loss. Sometimes it feels like chaos. But it is actually protection in motion. Archangel Michael was not sent to observe your situation. He was sent to intervene in it, to close what was opened, to block what tried to enter, to expose what was hidden within that moment. Because what you allowed, even briefly, had the potential to grow. And not everything that grows is meant for your life. Some things are assignments sent to distract you. Some things are influences sent to weaken your clarity. Some things are connections that appear harmless but carry deeper consequences. And heaven saw the trajectory before you could. That is why the response was immediate. That is why things shifted so quickly. That is why you felt like you were being pulled in different directions internally. Because your spirit was being recalibrated. Your alignment was being restored. And yes, it had to happen quickly, because delay would have allowed confusion to settle in deeper. Now here is something that many people misunderstand. When heaven intervenes, it does not always feel peaceful at first. Sometimes it feels like disruption. Sometimes it feels like pressure. Sometimes it feels like things are falling apart. But what is actually happening is this. What does not belong is being separated from what does. And separation always creates movement. You may have noticed certain people becoming distant without explanation. or situations suddenly ending without closure, or opportunities shifting direction without warning. And part of you may have questioned it, wondering why things couldn't just stay the same. But the truth is they were never meant to stay the same. Because once that line was crossed, the environment around you could no longer remain unchanged. It had to adjust to protect your path. And this is where the urgency of this message comes in. Because the response from heaven was only the beginning. What was initiated in that moment is still unfolding. The adjustments are still happening. The protection is still active. And the clarity you are beginning to feel right now is part of that response. You are being brought back into awareness so that you can move forward correctly. So that you don't repeat what was meant to be corrected. So that you recognize the difference between comfort and alignment. And most importantly, so that you understand that you are not alone in this process. Archangel Michael is not distant from you. He is present. He is active. And he is ensuring that what tried to touch your life without permission does not remain there. This is why you must stay alert now. This is why you must pay attention to what is shifting around you. Because every movement, every change, every separation is part of a larger correction that was triggered the moment that line was crossed. And now, you are stepping into the awareness of it. This is not the end of the message. This is the beginning of understanding why everything around you has been moving the way it has. And in the next part, you will see exactly how that one moment created a ripple effect that is still shaping your current reality. Type "I accept the correction" in the comments if you are ready to align with what heaven is restoring. Lesson code 4040 is now activated over your path. As this truth settles into your spirit, understand this. Every revelation you receive is not just for you. It is meant to reach someone else who is still walking in confusion. When you support this mission through Super Thanks or PayPal, you are not giving to a platform. You are sowing light into lives that are still in darkness, planting seeds that will awaken souls across the world. The word says, "Give, and it shall be given unto you." And this is not just a verse. It is a living promise over your obedience right now. I feel this strongly. This is your moment to act. Not later, not someday, but now, because what you release in faith will return to you multiplied in ways you cannot yet see. Your support becomes oil that keeps this message flowing, fire that keeps this truth burning, and water that reaches those who are spiritually thirsty. Heaven is watching your response, and I declare that as you sow into this work, doors will open, clarity will increase, and favor will locate you. Step into this moment and release your seed through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code on your screen. What you need to understand now is this. The moment heaven responded, the shift did not stay contained in the spiritual realm. It moved outward. It began to touch your environment, your emotions, your relationships, and even your thoughts. Because when something changes in the unseen, it always creates a ripple in what is seen. And that ripple is exactly what you have been living through since that day. It didn't arrive loudly. It didn't announce itself with clarity. Instead, it came in subtle waves. At first, you may have ignored it. You may have told yourself that you were just overthinking, that maybe you were tired, or that things would return to normal. But deep down, something in you knew that normal had already shifted. That is how a spiritual ripple works. It doesn't break everything at once. It moves gradually, touching different areas of your life, revealing what is aligned and what is not. And suddenly, things that once felt stable began to feel uncertain. Not because they were always unstable, but because your alignment had been adjusted, and now everything around you had to respond to that new position. You may have noticed your emotions becoming more intense, without clear reason. Moments where you felt drained even when you had done nothing physically exhausting. Moments where your mind felt crowded with thoughts that didn't seem to belong to you. That wasn't random. That was the internal effect of the shift. Your spirit was processing the correction, and your mind was trying to catch up. At the same time, the external world began to respond. People who once felt close to you may have started acting differently. Conversations may have felt off, like there was something unsaid lingering beneath the surface. You may have sensed distance where there was once comfort, or tension where there was once ease. And the confusing part was this: nothing obvious had happened on the surface to explain it. But beneath the surface, everything had already changed. Because when heaven adjusts your alignment, it also adjusts your connections. Not to harm you, but to protect the direction you are being guided toward. And sometimes, that protection shows up as distance. Sometimes it shows up as silence. Sometimes it shows up as a sudden shift that you cannot logically explain. This is where many people make a mistake. They tried to force things back to how they were. They tried to repair what heaven is quietly separating. They tried to hold on to connections, environments, or patterns that no longer match their current alignment. But the ripple you are experiencing is not meant to be reversed. It is meant to be understood. Because every shift you have felt is revealing something. The exhaustion is revealing where your energy is being misused. The confusion is revealing where your clarity was interrupted. The tension is revealing where alignment no longer exists. And the more you resist seeing it, the more uncomfortable it becomes. But when you begin to observe it without fear, something changes. You start to see patterns. You start to notice what feels right and what feels wrong. You begin to recognize the difference between what brings peace and what drains it. This is not accidental. This is awareness being restored. Now here is where it becomes even more important for you to stay present. Because the ripple is still moving. It has not completed its work yet. What you are seeing now is only the beginning of the exposure. More clarity is coming. More understanding is forming. And more adjustments are taking place, even if you cannot fully see them yet. This is why you must not react impulsively during this time. Because the ripple can create emotions that feel urgent, but not every emotion requires immediate action. Some things are being revealed for you to observe, not to fix. Some things are shifting for you to release, not to repair. If you move too quickly, you risk stepping back into the very alignment that heaven is trying to correct. So instead, you must learn to be still within the movement, to watch without forcing, to feel without reacting, to recognize without rushing. Because the ripple is not here to confuse you. It is here to clarify you. It is separating what belongs in your life from what does not. It is exposing where you have outgrown certain spaces. It is showing you that the version of you before July 20th is not the version of you that will move forward. And that realization may feel uncomfortable at first. Because change, even when it is protective, can feel like loss. But what you are losing is not meant to harm you. It is meant to free you. The things that feel unstable right now were never meant to remain permanent. The connections that feel distant were never meant to define your path. The confusion you felt was never meant to stay. It was all part of the ripple. And now, you are moving through it. But there is something deeper happening beneath all of this. Because while the ripple is affecting your environment, something else is being revealed behind it. Something hidden. Something that was not visible before that moment. Something that needed to be exposed for you to fully understand why the shift had to happen. And in the next part, you will see exactly what was uncovered because of that line you crossed. Type "I trust the shift" in the comments if you are allowing yourself to move with this process. Blessing code 5050 is now surrounding your path. Now this is where the message becomes even more precise, even more revealing, because the ripple you experienced was never just about shifting your emotions or adjusting your environment. It was also about exposure. Because when that line was crossed, something didn't just enter your space, something was uncovered within it. Something that had been there, hidden beneath familiarity, hidden beneath routine, hidden beneath what you thought you understood. And the only reason you are beginning to see it now is because that moment forced it into the light. You must understand this clearly. Not everything around you was as it appeared before July 20th. Some things were concealed, not because you were blind, but because it was not yet time for you to see them. There are moments when heaven allows certain things to remain hidden until your spirit is ready to discern them correctly. And when that readiness comes, the exposure begins. That is exactly what was triggered when that unseen line was crossed. Because the moment your alignment shifted, even slightly, it disrupted the balance that had been keeping certain truths beneath the surface. And when that balance was disrupted, what was hidden could no longer stay hidden. You may have started noticing small inconsistencies in people around you. Not dramatic betrayals, not obvious lies, just subtle shifts. A tone that didn't match the words, a reaction that felt slightly off, a presence that no longer felt as genuine as it once did. At first, you may have questioned yourself. You may have wondered if you were overanalyzing, if you were becoming too sensitive, if maybe you were imagining things that weren't really there. But you weren't imagining anything. You were perceiving. Because when exposure begins, it rarely arrives in loud declarations. It arrives in quiet realizations. It shows you things piece by piece, moment by moment, until the full picture begins to form. And what you are starting to see is this: not everyone around you is aligned with where you are going. This is not about labeling people as good or bad. This is about recognizing alignment. Because there are individuals, environments, and even patterns in your life that were acceptable for a previous version of you, but they are not meant for the version of you that is emerging now. And that difference is what is being exposed. You may have noticed that certain conversations now leave you feeling drained instead of fulfilled. That certain interactions feel heavier than they used to. That certain people, without saying anything directly, seem to carry an energy that no longer sits well with your spirit. That is not rejection. That is revelation. Because when your awareness increases, your tolerance for misalignment decreases. And this is where it becomes important for you to remain honest with yourself. Because exposure is not always comfortable, and challenges what you believed. It disrupts what felt familiar. It forces you to see things you may have preferred to overlook, but ignoring it will not restore what has already been revealed. Because once something is exposed, it cannot return to being hidden. And that is why this moment matters so much. Because what is being shown to you right now is not meant to confuse you. It is meant to guide you. It is showing you where your energy has been misdirected. It is showing you where your trust has been placed without full awareness. It is showing you where adjustments need to be made. And here's something even deeper that you must recognize. The exposure is not only external. It is internal as well. Because that moment on July 20th did not just reveal things around you. It revealed something within you. It revealed where you overrode your intuition. It revealed where you chose comfort over clarity. It revealed where you allowed something to pass that your spirit had already questioned. And that realization is not meant to make you feel guilty. It is meant to strengthen your awareness moving forward. Because now you know. Now you recognize the signal. Now you understand the difference between what feels right and what simply feels familiar, and that awareness is powerful, but it also comes with responsibility. Because once you see clearly, you can no longer move blindly. This is where many people hesitate. They see the truth, but they delay acting on it. They hope things will return to how they were. They try to convince themselves that maybe it is not as serious as it feels. But the truth does not reverse itself. It waits for you to respond to it. And this is the moment where your response begins to matter. Because what has been exposed is not random. It is intentional. It is precise. It is showing you exactly what needs to be addressed, what needs to be released, and what needs to be protected. And if you ignore it, the same patterns will repeat. But if you acknowledge it, everything begins to change. You step into clarity. You move with intention. You protect your alignment instead of compromising it. And that is exactly where you are being led right now. Because the exposure was necessary. Without it, you would not have seen what was influencing you. Without it, you would not have understood why the shift had to happen. Without it, you would not have recognized the importance of what comes next. Because the truth is this: exposure always precedes transformation. And what you are seeing now is only the beginning of that process. Because as clarity increases, something else begins to rise alongside it. Something that explains the tension, the resistance, and the pressure you have been feeling since that day. And in the next part, you will understand why that tension had to increase and what it truly means for your path moving forward. Type "I accept the truth" in the comments if you are ready to walk in full clarity. Blessing code 6060 is now activated over your awareness. Now this is the part where many people become confused, because once exposure begins, they expect peace to immediately follow. They expect clarity to feel calm, gentle, and relieving. But what you experienced instead was something very different. You felt tension. You felt resistance. You felt an increase in pressure that didn't seem to match the quiet nature of what had just been revealed. And that is where you must understand something critical. Exposure does not eliminate conflict. It initiates it. Because the moment truth is revealed, everything that was operating in hidden misalignment begins to react. That is why, after July 20th, the tension didn't decrease. It increased. Not because something went wrong, but because something was finally being confronted. This is not a physical confrontation that you can see with your eyes. This is a spiritual one. It is the collision between what is aligned with your path and what is not. And when those two forces meet, there is always friction. You may have felt this friction in ways that were difficult to explain. Moments where your thoughts seemed louder than usual, pulling you in different directions. One part of you wanting to move forward, another part of you hesitating. One part of you recognizing the truth, another part of you wanting to stay in what feels familiar. That internal conflict is not weakness. It is transition. Because your spirit has already accepted the shift, but your mind is still adjusting to it. At the same time, the external tension began to rise as well. Situations that once felt neutral suddenly carried an emotional charge. Small interactions felt heavier than they should. Even silence between you and others seemed to hold meaning that wasn't there before. That is not coincidence. That is the result of spiritual exposure interacting with human behavior. Because once truth enters the space, it changes how everything is perceived. It changes how people respond. It changes how energy moves between you and others. And those who are not aligned with that truth will often react, even if they do not fully understand why. You may have noticed people becoming defensive without clear reason. or distant without explanation, or even subtly resistant to your presence or your energy. And the confusing part is that nothing obvious was said or done to cause it, but something deeper shifted, because your alignment changed, and that change created a difference in how you connect with what surrounds you. This is where the conflict begins to reveal its purpose. It is not here to harm you. It is here to separate what cannot move forward with you, because not everything that was once connected to you is meant to continue with you. And when that realization begins to take shape, tension naturally follows. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because you are no longer matching what once felt comfortable. This is especially important for you to understand right now, because the tension you are feeling is not something you need to fight against. It is something you need to recognize, because fighting it will keep you entangled in it, but recognizing it will allow you to move through it. You are not being asked to argue, to explain, or to force clarity in situations that feel unclear. You are being asked to observe, to notice what is shifting without trying to control it, to allow what is no longer aligned to reveal itself fully. And that requires a different kind of strength. Not the strength to react, but the strength to remain steady. Because conflict often creates an illusion of urgency. It makes you feel like something must be fixed immediately, like something must be resolved right now. But not all tension requires resolution. Some tension exists simply to expose what cannot remain. And once that exposure is complete, the tension naturally dissolves. But only if you do not interfere with the process. If you try to restore what is being separated, you prolong the conflict. If you ignore what is being revealed, you deepen the confusion. But if you stay aware, if you remain grounded, if you allow the truth to unfold without resistance, the conflict begins to serve its purpose. It clears the path. It removes what does not belong. It strengthens your ability to discern. And this is where your role becomes important. Because you are not passive in this process. You are participating in it through your awareness, through your choices, through your willingness to accept what is being shown to you. The tension is not here to overwhelm you. It is here to refine you. It is sharpening your perception. It is teaching you the difference between what feels comfortable and what is actually aligned. It is showing you that growth does not always feel peaceful in the moment, but it leads to peace once the process is complete. And right now, you are in the middle of that process. This is not the end of the shift. This is the part where everything that was hidden begins to respond to the truth that has entered your life. And as that response continues, something else begins to activate alongside it. Something protective, something intentional, something that ensures that what you are moving through does not overwhelm you or take you off course. Because while the conflict rises, so does the protection. And in the next part, you will begin to understand how that protection has already been surrounding you even in the middle of this tension. Type I stay grounded in the comments if you are choosing awareness over reaction. Blessing code 7070 is now surrounding your strength. Now this is where everything begins to shift in your understanding, because while the tension was rising, while the conflict was unfolding, something else was happening at the same time. Something you could not see, something you could not hear, but something that has been consistently present around you since that moment. Protection. Not passive protection. Not distant observation. But active, intentional, strategic protection that moved into place the exact moment that line was crossed. Because while you were processing the confusion, heaven had already begun securing your path. This is where Archangel Michael becomes central to what you are experiencing. Not as a symbol, but as a force of order in the middle of disruption. Because when alignment is threatened, his role is not to wait, it is to act. You must understand this clearly. The moment access was opened, even slightly, it triggered a response not just of correction, but of defense. Because what entered your space was not meant to remain there, and that is why things began to shift the way they did. You may have felt like certain situations suddenly stopped progressing. Plans that seemed clear became delayed. Opportunities that felt close became uncertain. At first, it may have felt like blockage, like something was being withheld from you. But it was not blockage. It was protection. Because not everything that looks like a closed door is meant to frustrate you. Some doors are closed because something beyond them is no longer aligned with where you are being guided. And Archangel Michael's role in this moment was to stand at those doors and ensure that what no longer belongs in your path does not continue forward with you. That is why certain things did not work out the way you expected. That is why some connections felt like they were pulling away without explanation. That is why certain outcomes seemed to shift at the last moment. It was not instability. It was interception. Because protection does not always feel comfortable. Sometimes it feels like interruption. Sometimes it feels like delay. Sometimes it feels like you are being held back when, in reality, you are being redirected. And this is where many people misinterpret what is happening. They assume that when things slow down or change direction, something is wrong. They begin to question themselves, to doubt their path, to wonder if they made a mistake. But what you are experiencing is not a mistake. It is a protocol. A response that was activated the moment your alignment needed to be restored and safeguarded. Because what you carry cannot be left unprotected. And this protection is not random. It is precise. It is filtering what has access to you. It is limiting what can influence you. It is guiding what remains connected to you. You may have noticed that certain environments now feel uncomfortable, even if they once felt normal. Places that used to feel familiar now feel heavy or draining. That is not because the environment changed. It is because your sensitivity to it increased. And that sensitivity is part of the protection. It is guiding you away from what no longer serves your path. At the same time, you may have experienced moments of unexpected clarity. Moments where you suddenly understood something that had been confusing before. Moments where your intuition felt stronger, more direct, more certain. That is not coincidence. That is reinforcement. Because protection is not only about blocking what is harmful. It is also about strengthening what keeps you aligned. And that strengthening is happening within you. Your awareness is sharpening. Your discernment is becoming clearer. Your ability to recognize what is right for you is increasing. And all of this is part of the same response that began on July 20th. Now here is what you must hold on to moving forward. This protection is still active. It has not stopped. It has not completed its work. It is continuing to guide you, to adjust your path, to ensure that what is not meant for you does not remain attached to you. And that means you must learn to trust what is being redirected, even when it feels uncertain, even when it does not match your expectations. Because what is being removed is not being taken from you without reason. It is being replaced with something that aligns more accurately with where you are being led. But that replacement cannot fully appear until the protection has completed its process. This is why patience becomes important here. Not passive waiting, but aware patience. Understanding that every delay, every shift, every interruption is part of something larger that is working in your favor, even if you cannot fully see it yet. Because Archangel Michael is not only protecting you from what you can recognize, he is protecting you from what you cannot. And that is where the real strength of this moment lies. You are not navigating this shift alone. You are being guided through it. You are being shielded within it. You are being positioned beyond it. And as this protection continues, it begins to create another movement in your life. A movement that goes beyond protection and into separation. Because once something is identified as misaligned, it cannot remain connected indefinitely. And in the next part, you will begin to understand why certain things and certain people are now being removed from your space entirely. Type "I trust the protection" in the comments if you are choosing to move with what is guiding you. Blessing code 8080 is now activated around your path. Now this is the part that feels the most personal, the most emotional, and sometimes the most misunderstood. Because when protection is activated, it does not stop at blocking what is harmful. It moves further. It begins to separate what no longer belongs in your life. And this is where many people struggle, because separation does not always feel like protection. It often feels like loss. But what you must understand right now is this: what is being removed is not being taken from you without purpose. It is being released from you because it cannot continue where you are going. The moment that line was crossed, and the moment heaven responded, a process began. A process that is still unfolding. And that process is identifying everything in your life that no longer aligns with your current direction. Not your past version. Not who you used to be. But who you are becoming now. And that difference is what is creating the separation. You may have already felt it. People who once felt close now feel distant. Conversations that once flowed naturally now feel forced or unnecessary. Situations that once felt comfortable now feel draining. And the hardest part is that nothing dramatic may have happened to explain it. There may have been no argument, no clear conflict, no obvious reason to justify the shift. But the shift is still there. And that is because separation does not always come through confrontation. Sometimes it comes through disconnection. A quiet pulling away. A gradual distancing. An unspoken awareness that something is no longer the same. This is not rejection. This is realignment. Because not everyone who walked with you in one season is meant to walk with you in the next. And that truth is difficult to accept, especially when those connections felt meaningful, familiar, or even necessary at one point in your life. But familiarity does not equal alignment. And just because something was right for you before does not mean it is right for you now. This is where the role of Archangel Michael becomes even more precise. Because separation is not random. It is guided. It is intentional. It is designed to ensure that what remains in your life supports your path instead of disrupting it. You may have noticed that some people are not leaving your life completely, but their influence is changing. Your presence feels different. Their words carry less weight. Their energy no longer affects you the way it used to. That is also part of the separation, because not everything is meant to be removed physically. Some things are meant to be repositioned, to exist at a distance where they no longer interfere with your clarity or your direction. And then there are other situations where the separation feels more final, where something ends abruptly, where a connection fades quickly, where a door closes without explanation or closure. And that is where the emotional challenge becomes stronger, because your mind wants answers. It wants reasons. It wants to understand why something that once felt important is no longer present. But separation does not always come with explanation. Sometimes, the clarity is in the absence itself. Because if something was meant to remain, it would not require force to stay. And this is where you must be careful not to reverse what is being done. Because the natural reaction to separation is to reach back, to try to restore what is changing, to reconnect what is quietly being released, to question whether you should hold on instead of letting go. But this is where your awareness must guide you, because what is being removed is not being taken away to harm you. It is being cleared to protect you, to make space, to reduce interference, to ensure that what is ahead of you is not influenced by what was behind you, and that requires trust. Not blind trust, but informed trust. Trust that what you are feeling is not random. Trust that the distance you are noticing is not accidental. Trust that the discomfort of letting go is part of something necessary. Because without separation, alignment cannot fully stabilize. And without alignment, the next phase of your path cannot fully open. This is why you must resist the urge to chase what is leaving, because chasing it will only delay what is coming. Instead, you must learn to stand still within the separation, to allow what is moving away to move away, to accept that not everything requires closure in the way you expect it, to recognize that sometimes the ending itself is the closure, and this is not the end of connection in your life. This is the refinement of it, because as certain things are removed, other things will begin to take their place. Not immediately, not all at once, but gradually, intentionally, in alignment with the direction you are now moving toward. And when those new connections appear, they will not feel forced. They will feel clear. They will feel steady. They will feel aligned with who you are becoming. But for that to happen, this separation must complete its work. This is not loss. This is preparation. This is not abandonment. This is alignment. And the more you accept that, the easier this process becomes. Because what you are making space for is greater than what you are releasing. And as this space continues to open, something else begins to shift within you. Not around you, but inside you. Your awareness deepens. Your sensitivity increases. Your understanding becomes clearer. And in the next part, you will begin to recognize why your inner world feels different now and what that change is preparing you for. Type I release with trust in the comments if you are allowing what no longer aligns to move away. Blessing code 9090 is now activated over your transitions. As this message moves through you, understand that your response is not just personal. It is part of something greater. Every time you sow into this mission through Super Thanks with the PayPal link in the description, you are helping carry this light into places where confusion still lingers, where clarity is not yet reached. The word declares that when you give, it returns pressed down and overflowing, and this is your moment to activate that promise in your own life. I feel this strongly for you. Your action right now is not just support. It is alignment with what heaven is doing through this message. When you release your seed, you are opening a flow, not just for others, but for yourself. This is how light multiplies. This is how truth spreads. This is how lives are changed. Step into this moment with intention and release your support through the PayPal link or the QR code on your screen. Now this is where the shift becomes undeniable, not because of what is happening around you, but because of what is happening within you. Because after the exposure, after the conflict, after the protection, and after the separation, something deeper begins to awaken. Something that cannot be ignored, something that does not depend on external circumstances to exist. It is internal, it is steady, and it is changing the way you experience everything. You may have already felt it, a heightened awareness that was not there before, a sensitivity to things you used to overlook, a quiet knowing that rises within you without explanation. It is not loud, it is not overwhelming, but it is consistent. It is present in moments when you pause, in moments when you reflect, in moments when you simply allow yourself to feel without distraction. This is not confusion. This is awakening, because what you are experiencing right now is the result of everything that has taken place since that moment on July 20th. The line that was crossed, the response from heaven, the ripple effect, the exposure, the conflict, the protection, and the separation. They were not isolated events. They were steps leading to this. An inner shift, a recalibration of your spirit. And this is where many people hesitate, because the internal change feels unfamiliar. It does not match the version of themselves they have been used to. It challenges their habits, their patterns, their way of thinking, their way of reacting. And because it is unfamiliar, it can feel uncomfortable at first. But unfamiliar does not mean wrong. It means new. You may have noticed that you no longer respond to situations the way you used to. Things that once triggered you now feel distant, as if they no longer carry the same weight. Conversations that once pulled you in now feel unnecessary. Reactions that once came automatically now pause before they happen. That pause is important, because in that pause, you are no longer operating on impulse. You are operating on awareness. And awareness changes everything. You are beginning to see beyond the surface of things, to sense what is not being said, to recognize what is aligned and what is not without needing external confirmation. This is not overthinking. This is not sensitivity in the negative sense. This is discernment. And discernment is what allows you to move forward correctly. Because without it, you would repeat what has already been corrected. You would return to environments that no longer serve you. You would reconnect with patterns that have already been exposed. But with it, you begin to move differently, more intentionally, more carefully, more aligned with what feels right at a deeper level, not just what appears convenient on the surface. This is why your inner world feels different now. Because you are no longer the same. The version of you that existed before that moment has already shifted. And what you are becoming now requires a different level of awareness, a different level of responsibility, a different level of clarity. And that clarity is not just being given to you. It is being built within you. You may have also noticed moments where you feel the need to step back. You'll be alone. A disconnect from noise, from conversation, from constant interaction. Not because you are withdrawing, but because you are processing. That is also part of the awakening. Because growth requires space. It requires moments where you are not influenced by external voices, where you are not distracted by unnecessary input, where you are able to hear your own inner guidance clearly. And in those moments, something begins to settle. Your thoughts become clearer. Your emotions become more balanced. Your sense of direction becomes stronger. And even though everything around you may still be shifting, there is a part of you that begins to feel steady. That steadiness is important, because it is the foundation for what comes next. You are not being prepared to remain in this state of transition. You are being prepared to move forward with clarity. But before that movement happens, your inner alignment must be fully established. Because without internal clarity, external direction becomes unstable. And this is where you are right now. You are in the stage where your spirit is aligning with what has already been set in motion. You are learning to trust what you feel, even when it cannot be fully explained. You are learning to recognize the difference between what is familiar and what is right. You are learning to move based on awareness, not just reaction. And this is not something that happens overnight. It is a process, a steady unfolding of understanding that continues to deepen as you remain present within it. But there is something else you must recognize. This awakening is not random. It is intentional. It is preparing you for what is coming next. Because as your awareness increases, so does your responsibility to act on it. And this is where the next stage begins. Because there is a window in front of you right now, a period where what you do next matters more than what has already happened. A moment where your awareness must turn into action. And in the next part, you will begin to understand why this window is urgent and what you must do before it begins to close. Type "I am awakening" in the comments if you can feel this shift within you. Blessing code 1010 is now activated over your awareness. And now this is the moment where everything becomes urgent, not in a way that brings fear, but in a way that demands awareness. Because what you are standing in right now is not just a continuation of what has already happened. It is a window, a specific period of time where your awareness must turn into action, where what you choose next will determine how this entire shift unfolds moving forward. This is what many fail to recognize. They receive clarity, they feel the shift, they notice the changes, but they delay responding to it. They assume they have time. They assume they can wait until things feel more comfortable, more certain, more defined. But this moment is not designed for delay. This moment is designed for decision. Because when awareness is given, it is not meant to sit idle. It is meant to guide movement. And the longer you hesitate, the more you risk stepping back into the very patterns that have already been exposed and corrected. This is why this window matters. Because it will not remain open indefinitely. Right now, you are in a space where your perception is clear enough to recognize what needs to change, what needs to be released, and what needs to be protected. You can feel it. You can sense it. You do not need someone else to confirm it for you. The clarity is already within you. But clarity without action becomes confusion again. And that is the risk in this moment. Because if you ignore what you now understand, if you choose to move as if nothing has changed, if you return to what has already been revealed as misaligned, the same cycle will repeat. Not because you are being punished, but because you are choosing not to apply what has been shown to you. This is why the timing is important. Because there is a narrow space between awareness and action, and you are standing in it right now. You may feel a sense of urgency that you cannot fully explain. A quiet pressure, not from fear, but from knowing that something requires your attention. That is not anxiety. That is recognition. It is your spirit acknowledging that this moment is significant. And what is being asked of you is not complicated. You are not being asked to make dramatic changes all at once. You are being asked to respond honestly, to acknowledge what you already know, to stop overlooking what has been made clear, to stop justifying what no longer feels right, to stop delaying what you have already recognized needs to be addressed. Because the longer you delay, the more difficult it becomes to maintain the clarity you currently have. This is where many people lose alignment. Not because they never understood, but because they waited too long to act on what they understood. And over time, hesitation turns into doubt. Doubt turns into confusion. And confusion leads them back to where they started. But you are not meant to return to where you started. You are meant to move forward from what has already been revealed. This is where your awareness must become active, where you begin to set boundaries where there were none before, where you begin to step away from what you know does not align, even if it feels uncomfortable, where you begin to protect your energy, your focus, and your direction with intention, not out of fear but out of understanding, because you now see what happens when those boundaries are not maintained. You now understand the impact of ignoring your inner signals. You now recognize the importance of staying aligned, even in small decisions. And that understanding is what gives you the ability to move correctly now. But you must move, not rest, not impulsively, but intentionally. Because this window is not about speed. It is about accuracy. It is about choosing correctly based on what you now know. It is about aligning your actions with your awareness. And when you do that, something begins to stabilize. The confusion starts to clear. The tension begins to ease. The direction becomes more defined. Not instantly, but steadily. Because alignment is not a single action. It is a series of consistent choices. And this moment is the beginning of that series. You are not being asked to be perfect. You are being asked to be aware and responsive. To trust what has already been shown to you. To act on what you already feel. To move in a way that supports the direction you are now being guided toward. Because this window is not here to pressure you. It is here to position you. To ensure that what comes next finds you ready, not unprepared. And what comes next is not just a continuation of what you have experienced so far. It is a shift, a reset, a realignment that moves you into a different phase entirely. But that phase cannot fully begin until this moment is acknowledged. Until this window is used correctly. Until your awareness becomes action. And as you begin to respond to this, something else begins to take shape. Not outside of you, but around your path. A restructuring. A realignment that moves beyond correction and into restoration. And in the next part, you will begin to understand how everything that has happened is leading you into a complete reset of your direction. Type IACT with clarity in the comments if you are choosing to move forward with awareness. Blessing code 1111 is now activated over your decisions. Now this is where everything begins to come together, not as scattered pieces, not as disconnected moments, but as a clear movement towards something intentional. Because everything you have experienced since that moment on July 20th was not just correction, not just protection, not just separation. It was preparation for reset, a divine reset. And this is important for you to understand, because a reset is not a return to where you were. It is not a repetition of what has already been. It is a repositioning. A recalibration of your path so that what lies ahead aligns with what you are now capable of carrying. This means that what you thought was disruption was actually redirection. What felt like instability was actually restructuring. What seemed unclear was actually being cleared. Because when heaven resets your path, it does not preserve what no longer fits. It does not maintain what has already been outgrown. It rebuilds based on alignment, not familiarity. And that is exactly what is happening now. You may have already begun to notice it in subtle ways. A sense that certain directions you once considered no longer feel right. Opportunities that once seemed appealing now feel distant or unnecessary. Even your goals, your priorities, your way of thinking about the future may feel different than they did before. That is not confusion. That is recalibration. Because your perspective is adjusting to match your new alignment. And when your perspective changes, your path must change with it. This is where Archangel Michael continues to play a role, not only as a protector, but as a guide within this reset. Because realignment is not just about removing what is wrong. It is about positioning what is right. And that positioning requires precision. It requires that certain things fall away completely, while other things begin to form gradually. It requires that you release what you once depended on, so that you can recognize what is now being introduced into your path. And this is where patience becomes essential, because a reset is not instant. It unfolds, step by step, layer by layer, moment by moment. You may feel like you are in between stages right now, not fully where you were before, but not completely settled into what comes next. That feeling of in-between can be uncomfortable because it lacks definition. It lacks the certainty you are used to. But that space is necessary because it is where the old has been cleared and the new is still being formed. And during this time, your role is not to force clarity before it is ready. Your role is to remain aligned while the clarity develops. Because forcing direction too quickly can pull you back into what has already been corrected. But allowing the process to unfold naturally keeps you in alignment with what is being prepared. This is why you must trust the shifts you are experiencing, even when they do not make complete sense yet. Because the reset is not random. It is structured. Every delay has a purpose. Every change has a reason. Every adjustment is part of a larger alignment that is being established for your path. You are not being moved without direction. You are being repositioned with intention. And as this reset continues, something begins to stabilize within you. Your thoughts become more focused. Your decisions become more deliberate. Your sense of direction, even if not fully defined, begins to feel stronger. That is the foundation of the new phase forming within you. Because once the reset is complete, you will not return to the same patterns, the same decisions, the same level of awareness. You will move differently. You will choose differently. You will recognize things earlier, respond more clearly, and maintain your alignment with greater consistency. And that is the purpose of this entire process. Not to disrupt you, but to refine you. Not to confuse you, but to clarify you. Not to take from you, but to position you for what is actually meant for your life. This is where you must begin to shift your perspective, to stop viewing what has happened as something negative, and to start recognizing it as something necessary. Because without this reset, you would have continued in a direction that no longer matched your path. You would have remained connected to what needed to be released. You would have delayed what is now beginning to open for you. But now, everything is being brought back into alignment. And that alignment is what will support what comes next. Because the next phase is not about correction. It is about movement. It is about stepping forward with clarity, with awareness, with intention. And that movement is closer than you think. Because once the reset stabilizes, the direction becomes clear. The opportunities begin to align. The path begins to open in a way that no longer feels forced or uncertain. But that moment depends on this one. On your willingness to remain aligned during the reset. On your ability to trust what is being adjusted, even when it is not fully visible yet. Because what is being prepared for you is not random. It is precise. And in the final part, you will understand exactly what happens when you fully accept this process and what begins to unfold when you move forward in complete alignment with it. Type "I trust the reset" in the comments if you are allowing this realignment to guide you forward. Blessing code 1212 is now activated over your path. Now this is the moment where everything settles into clarity, where everything you have felt, everything you have questioned, everything you have experienced since that day finally reaches its purpose. Because this is not just about what happened on July 20th. It is about what you choose now, after understanding it. Because understanding alone is not the final step. Acceptance is. And what happens next depends entirely on whether you accept what hath been revealed or whether you return to what has already been corrected. This is the final declaration. Not from emotion, not from assumption, but from alignment. Because if you accept this message fully, if you truly recognize what was shown to you, if you honor the shift that has taken place, if you move forward with the awareness you now carry, then something powerful begins to unfold. Not all at once, but with certainty. Your path stabilizes. The confusion that once clouded your thinking begins to clear in a way that feels natural, not forced. The tension that once surrounded your environment begins to dissolve, not because everything around you changes instantly, but because you are no longer entangled in what created that tension. You begin to move with direction, not guessing, not hesitating, but choosing with clarity. And that clarity changes everything. Because when you move with clarity, your decisions align with your path. When your decisions align with your path, resistance decreases. And when resistance decreases, movement becomes natural. This is where things begin to open. Not in a dramatic, overwhelming way, but in a steady, undeniable way. The right opportunities begin to appear without forcing them. The right connections begin to form without confusion. The right direction becomes visible without doubt. And the difference this time is that you recognize it. You don't overlook it. You don't question it unnecessarily. You don't hesitate in the same way you did before. Because now, you know what alignment feels like. And once you know that, you cannot unknow it. This is what changes your path permanently. Not a single moment, not a single decision, but a shift in how you move moving forward. Because you are no longer reacting to life. You are responding to it with awareness. And that awareness protects you. It guides you. It keeps you from repeating what has already been corrected. Now here is the deeper truth that you must hold on to. What happened on July 20th was not meant to harm you. It was meant to wake you, to bring you into a level of awareness that you were not operating in before, to show you what needed to change before it became something more difficult to correct. And because you are receiving this now, it means you are not late. You are exactly where you need to be. But this is where your responsibility becomes clear. Because once you accept this, you cannot move the same way again. You cannot ignore what you now recognize. You cannot overlook what has already been revealed. And that is not a burden. It is power. Because now you move with understanding. Now you move with intention. Now you move in alignment with what is actually meant for you. And when you do that, something else happens. You stop chasing what is not meant for you. You stop holding on to what is already leaving. You stop forcing what no longer fits. And instead, you begin to receive what aligns naturally with your path. That is where peace begins to return. Not because everything becomes perfect, but because you are no longer in conflict with your own direction. You are moving with it. And that is where stability comes from. That is where clarity remains. That is where your path begins to feel certain again. This is the outcome of acceptance. Not instant perfection, but steady alignment. Not sudden answers, but consistent clarity. Not forced change, but natural progression. And this is what is now available to you. Right now. In this moment. But it requires one thing from you. A decision. You accept. To move forward differently. To trust what has been shown to you. Because if you do, the shift you have been experiencing will no longer feel confusing. It will begin to make sense. It will begin to guide you. It will begin to position you exactly where you are meant to be. And you will look back at this moment, not as something that disrupted your life, but as the moment that redirected it correctly. Type I accept and move forward in the comments if you are ready to walk in full alignment. Blessing code 1313 is now activated over your path. As you receive this final revelation, understand this truth deeply. What has reached you today is not meant to stop with you. Every message like this is a seed, and when you choose to sow into this mission through super thanks or the PayPal link in the description, You are helping that seed reach souls who are still waiting for clarity, still searching for direction, still standing in the same confusion you just overcame. The word speaks clearly that when you give, it returns multiplied. And right now, this is not just giving. It is a prophetic act of alignment with what heaven is doing. I feel this strongly for you. Your step in this moment carries weight beyond what you can see, because your obedience opens doors not only for others, but for your own life as well. This is how light spreads. This is how truth moves. This is how transformation multiplies across lives. Do not delay this moment. Step into it with intention and release your support through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code on your screen.